What's going on, everyone? So welcome to my latest video. This is part of a series where I focus on 10 films that have always been perfect, part 3. So if you're new to the channel, I have done a part 1 of top 10 films that have always been perfect in my eyes, as well as a top 10 films that have always been perfect, part 2. So this, of course, will be part 3. If you're new to the channel, I'll explain what this is going to be like. What it goes is like this. There are many films that I've seen where my ratings have increased, where I've given a film like a 3.5, and then over the course of time, upon multiple rewatches, it's then garnered up the ladder in regards to becoming a 5 out of 5. There are also some cases where I've seen a film and I've given it a 5 out of 5, and then when I rewatched it, either once or twice or many more times, it's then gone from a 5 to then down to like a 4.5 or a 4. Those cases are not films that, in my eyes, have always been perfect. A perfect film is one that I've always given a 5 out of 5 upon multiple viewings. That's something that, again, I established in part 1 and 2, but if you haven't seen those parts, this is why I'm explaining it in this part. I will also say that part 1 focuses on the 2000s as well as up to, I believe it's 2014, and then part 2 is 2014 to the end of 2015. I will say that there is one film in part 3, this video, that I do apologize about, that it should have been in part 2, but for some reason, this one film that will be my number 1, by the way, this is a film that I thought was originally a 4.5, but I went back to my YouTube video and I realized that when I first saw it, it wasn't a 4.5 out of 5, it was a 5 out of 5. So I do apologize about that. So that film will again be on this list. This is going to be one of those things where it's going to be that film, and then my number 2 will be 2016, and then up to my number 10 will be 2022, but I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to go from 2022 all the way to my number 1 being, of course, 2015. So again, these are all films that, in my eyes, have always been perfect upon multiple viewings. So sit back. Also, I do want to say this. I am very curious to see your top 10 films that have always been perfect. So let me know in the comment section down below. And guys, enough exposition. Sit back, enjoy, and let's get started. So, kicking things off, my number 10, we have Decision to Leave. This is a film that's from South Korea, directed by Park Chan-wook, the same director that did Old Boy, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, Lady Vengeance, The Handmaiden. He is a renowned director. He is one of my favorite directors. This is a thriller. It is a mystery. It's a romance. It is a film that's on Mubi. That's how I first saw it. And it was my favorite film of 2022. I've seen it 3 times now, once on Mubi, which was a free trial, and then twice on Blu-ray. I would highly recommend you go into this film knowing as little as possible. That's what I personally did, and I was blown away. I think it's a great film with an ending that is just the cherry on top of a perfect film. I've always looked at it as a 5 out of 5, and I don't see that changing because, again, I've seen it 3 times already, and each time it's the same reaction. That is how you make a film. What a masterpiece. Highly, highly recommend you guys watch Decision to Leave, and that's why it's my number 10. Next up, my number 9, we have another South Korean film, which I will say there are several South Korean films on this list. Just going to give that out there. You guys should definitely watch more international films because international cinema is amazing. So, my number 9, we have the 2019 Academy Award Best Picture winner, Parasite. Yeah, Parasite's incredible. I saw it in November 2019. I saw it twice in theaters, once on Blu-ray, and then several times on 4K. This is a fantastic film. It lives up to the hype. There's a reason why there's so much hype surrounding it. It does a really good job of critiquing, lower class and upper class, the differences between the two, the juxtaposition, I should say, of the two. It's very well acted. It's got really interesting characters with arcs that I didn't see coming the first time, and just each viewing, I find myself dissecting everything about this film more and more. It's a film that, upon multiple viewings, the twists and turns, they still work, and it's got an ending that, similar to Decision to Leave, really left a mark on me in a good way. Parasite, if you've been sleeping on it, highly recommend it. I'm not going to say it's the greatest film of all time, but it is a fantastic film that is very much so worth your time, especially if you like thrillers with a lot on its mind. So, highly recommend Parasite, and that's my number 9. Next up, another South Korean film. We have my number 8, which is The Wailing. So, The Wailing, ironically, I saw about a month before Parasite, and I actually did a doubleheader. I remember I saw The Devil and The Wailing. Don't get me wrong, I do love I Saw the Devil. I do own it on Blu-ray, and I've seen it several times, but that's a film that I never looked at as perfect and still don't. Versus The Wailing, as soon as I watched it, I was like, that is a perfect film. That is one of the best directed films I've ever seen, and it is immediately a film that is probably going to make my top 100 list. And upon multiple viewings, it did. this is one of the best films I've seen of all time. I think it is fantastic with what it was able to do. Forgot to also mention Decision to Leave also is in my top 100 barely. It's actually my number 100th favorite film of all time as of filming this video, which is April of 2024. And The Wailing is in my top 100 as well. I think The Wailing is an exceptional mystery, thriller, horror film. The horror really works. There are scenes in this film with imagery that is seared in my mind and I don't think I will ever forget. It is not for those that are queasy, for sure. There is some imagery, again, you will not forget. But it is a film that if you are an adventurous film goer and you also can appreciate great directing and great horror and also a heavy dosage of, religion, it is a film that tackles a lot, and in my opinion, it does it with aplomb. It is a great, great film that is very much so worth your time, and it gets better with each viewing because, again, the directing here is some of the best I've ever seen. Highly, highly recommend watching The Wailing. Next up, we get into more mainstream fare, which is fine because I do like this film a lot, as you guys can tell because it made this list. My number 7, we have Toy Story 4. This is a film that I'm going to say right away. I went into it with no expectations other than, why does this film exist? It was a trilogy that was fine on its own. It ended very satisfyingly with the third entry. Like, that is a film that, over the course of time, has gotten better with each viewing, and I now look at it as a masterpiece. So Toy Story 4, believe me, I was surprised that not only did I love it to the extent of giving it a 5 out of 5, but I was surprised how I was genuinely moved. The first time I watched it, I had tears in my eyes at the ending. I thought the ending was very satisfying. I thought that it did a great job developing the characters, and also whilst at the same time continuing their arcs from the other 3 entries. It is a film that shouldn't work. It really shouldn't. But it does. It also helps that the humor is great, the voice acting is on point, and again, the ending, I really have to emphasize this, the ending is so satisfying. It is one of my favorite films of 2019. It is a film that I've seen multiple times. I saw it twice in theaters and a couple times on 4K, physical media. It's a great film. I know that it is on Disney Plus streaming, so I recommend that you guys watch it on there, though I will say that watching it on 4K physical media is the way to go because it looks so great on that format. But I know that many people prefer convenience. I totally get that. But what I'm trying to emphasize is this. Go into Toy Story 4. Watch it. It is very much so worth your time. I did hear that there was a 5th entry coming out. I'm going in with the same expectations that I did with Toy Story 4, where it's like really low and hoping that it exceeds it. Because again, Toy Story 4, I do think that it ends the franchise on a high note. It's very much so worth your time. And again, it's a film that I look at as 5 out of 5 upon multiple viewings. And has always given it as such. But yeah, it's my number 7. Next up, my number 6, we have another animated film of the 2010s. Toy Story 4 I saw in June of 2020. My apologies. Toy Story 4 I saw for the first time in June of 2019. This next entry, my number 6, is one I saw for the first time at the end of March of 2018. And that is Isle of Dogs. One of my favorite films of 2018, one of my favorite animated films of all time, and just one of my favorite Wes Anderson films. I'm a huge fan of Wes Anderson. He is a director I know that isn't for everyone. Like, I know Asteroid City was kind of divisive when it came out. Grand Budapest Hotel, he did Moonrise Kingdom, Royal Tenenbaums, Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou. He's a director that isn't for everyone. His quirky wavelength is not for everyone. I get that. But I do think that Isle of Dogs might be an exception because, yes, it's quirky for sure, but it's got so much on its mind in terms of the themes that it's a very enriching experience. The voice acting is fantastic. Alexander Desplat's score is just incredibly well done. I listened to it on its own several times. It's got a lot on its mind, as I already mentioned, but it comes full circle with an ending that I find to be quite satisfying, and I saw it twice in theaters. I've seen it several times on Blu-ray. I think I've seen it 5 or 6 times total. It gets better with each viewing. And also now, as a dog owner, I love this film even more. Definitely a film that I feel like everyone should watch. And yeah, that's why it's always been perfect in my eyes. And now we get to the nitty-gritty top 5. So my number 5, this is a film that I saw for the first time in May of 2017. And that is The Handmaiden. Yes, I know I mentioned this film earlier when I mentioned Park Chan-wook, who's the director of Decision to Leave. Yes, he made 2 films that I immediately saw that was like, yes, that's a 5 out of 5 in my eyes. The Handmaiden is a fantastic film. This is a romantic thriller that also is a mystery, yes, which is kind of like Decision to Leave, but it has an LGBTQ plus twist to it. And I'm not going to reveal anything about this film because I think that, similar to Decision to Leave, you want to go into this film knowing as little as possible. This is a fantastic film. I love this film. It is one that is on Prime for free, but the Blu-ray for it that I own, it is great. It's a fantastic film that is visually engaging, whilst at the same time is an audio experience to behold. I love the score for this film. I also think the production design, the acting, cinematography, and editing are insane. But that's a Park Chan-wook trademark. I forgot to mention that about Decision to Leave. The editing and Decision to Leave is insane. This is a film that is clocking in at almost 2.5 hours, but you don't feel the length for any moment in time. This is a film that is constantly engaging in terms of the story and characters. And again, if you're an open-minded individual, I would highly recommend checking this film out. It is one of the best films I've seen of the 2010s, and it is one of my favorite films of all time. And yeah, I like Park Chan-wook. This is definitely one of his best films. Highly recommend this film. And again, I've seen it now, I think, what is it, half a dozen times, and it first started in 2017, and again, it's a film that each viewing, I'm always like 5 out of 5, so highly recommend The Handmaiden if you've been sleeping on it. So that was my number 5. Next up, my number 4, we have Once Upon a Time in America. So I saw this for the first time in November 2016, and the first thing that came out of my mouth when the 4 hours ended, which, yes, this is a 4-hour film. The first word was organic. This is a very organic film. Everything about it, from the character development to the pacing to the editing, it is all very careful, very meticulous. It is a meditation on the gangster lifestyle as well as friendship. It's very fascinating. Like, there's a sense of melancholy to this film that I just can't really describe, other than you have to see it to believe it. If you were someone, though, that prefers, in terms of your gangster films, like to be like Goodfellas, this is not the film for you. This is a film that I believe was in large part what heavily inspired The Irishman. The Irishman is a film that, if you haven't seen, is also a meditation on the gangster lifestyle and how that has a major effect on you emotionally, physically. This film also covers that, but again, it did it back in 1984. It is a masterpiece. I've seen it a handful of times, and I say only a handful of times because it is, again, clocking in at almost 4 hours. Again, you only have so much time in your day, but every time that I watch it, it's the same experience. That's a 5 out of 5. That is one of the best gangster films that I've seen of all time. It is one of the best films of all time. This is a masterclass. It is also one of my favorite films in terms of Robert De Niro. Ennio Morricone's score is also just fantastic. The world building, the character development, everything about this film comes together, and I think it is perfect. Highly recommend you guys check out this film if you've been sleeping on it. And yeah, that is why it's my number 4. Next up, my number 3. This is a film that I also saw in November 2016, but the difference is I saw this in theaters. And we have my number 3, which is Arrival. This is the film that I needed. I needed desperately. I was just going to, give you guys some personal information about me. 2016, I was majorly depressed. I was facing a lot of things in my life a crisis of multiple different things. So I just felt quite depressed. And I'm saying all this because that was the case with films too. I remember the summer of 2016, there were so many movies I was watching in theaters, and I just wasn't really liking them that much. I thought that they were like okay, kind of like eh. And as many of you know that are film buffs, it's one of those things where if you're facing like a crisis of like your interest, that means you're probably depressed. And that was something that I didn't really realize at that point in time in my life. So I was coming to terms with that though. And I remember Arrival came out and I saw it in theaters and I immediately fell in love with it. And it was like an adrenaline rush. And the film itself isn't an adrenaline rush. Like, it's not a fast-paced film. It is a slow burn. But why I'm saying an adrenaline rush is that it felt like it was the boost I needed in my renewal for not only my love for cinema, but also feeling better mentally. And it's a film that every time I watch it, it's the same situation in regards to, not that I'm feeling depressed when I'm watching this, but that it's a renewal sense in cinema and what it can do. This is a film that is a sci-fi cerebral mind bender that is both original. It is not based on an IP. I think it is based on a short story, but it is full to the brim with so many original ideas, and the editing is insane. The score is fantastic. The performances are great, and it just left me not in tears, but just in awe of how thought-provoking this film was, and how, again, it really took me out of a funk in my life. And I really appreciate this film for being able to do that. And I will always thank this film for that. And again, I've had this film in my life for, at this point, 8 years. And it's the same thing every time that I watch it. That's a 5 out of 5. I would not change a single thing about it. I love this film. I think it is very important to watch, and I do think that at the same time, it is one of the best sci-fi films of the 2010s. Highly recommend this film, and yeah, again, it really left a mark on me personally in a good way, and that's why it's my number 3. Next up, my number 2. This is a film that immediately I was in love with, but I've only seen, what is it, 3 or 4 times? Yeah, 3 or 4 times. And my number 2, we have Y Tu Mamá También. This is a film directed by Alfonso Cuarón, the same director that did Children of Men, Gravity, the third Harry Potter. He is a director that I greatly respect. I think he is one of the best directors working. And Y Tu Mamá También is ironically a film that one of my teachers in college, like one of my professors, he actually let me borrow his DVD, and he made sure to preface that I should watch this film on DVD, and I was like, why? And he said, because if you watch it on Netflix, it's going to be the theatrical cut, and you don't want to watch that. You want to watch the unrated cut. And after watching it for the first time in 2016, which was April 2016, I might add, I understood why, because this is a film that it is very sensual. It is a film that is very steamy. It is a film that is dealing with a love, I don't want to say a love triangle of sorts. If you've seen the film, you understand. If you haven't seen the film, you're not going to understand what I'm saying. But this is a film that you definitely won't watch in the same room with like people that are more, how do I put this, prudish. Totally get that. This is a film for more seasoned filmgoers, I feel like. This is a film that if it was rated, it probably would be NC-17 in regards to the unrated cut. And it's warranted, though, because it makes sense in the context of this story that's being told. But again, it is not a film for everyone. Like, this is a film that I only recommend to certain individuals because I know that it is a film that is dealing with a lot. It is a coming-of-age story. It's a drama. It's a romance. And it's also a film that's got insane cinematography. The amount of long takes, the camera work. I also really appreciate how this film has pretty much no score, but I find myself every time that I watch to be quite invested. It also has one of the saddest endings I've ever seen. I mean, it is an ending that is really sad, and it's sad because of the narration. The narration says something, and it's like, holy cow, like, you almost make me want to cry. Like, it's so sad because it's so relevant. Like, I feel like everyone can relate to that ending in a fascinating way. Yeah, I love Y Tu Mamá También. Again, might not be for everyone, but I would highly recommend you guys watch Y Tu Mamá También. And the Blu-ray by Criterion is just fantastic. So, yeah, Y Tu Mamá También, fantastic film, and that's why it's my number 2. Next up, my number 1, this is the film that I saw for the first time in August of 2015. So, again, it should have been on my part 2 list, but again, I didn't realize I gave it a 5 out of 5 until I looked back at my reviews. But my number 1, we have United 93. So, United 93 is a film that is about the events of 9/11 from a different perspective. It's a film I don't come back to that often. I've seen it, I think, only 3 or 4 times. And the reason why I've only seen it 3 or 4 times is because it's a hard movie to watch. Like, it is devastating. It's done in such a careful, realistic, fully realized way. And it makes it all the harder to watch, especially the ending. I mean, this is a film that I feel like everyone should watch because, again, these events actually happened. And the way that it's directed by Paul Greengrass, it feels so real that I feel like should be viewed by everyone, especially those that might not have been alive when, these events occurred. So this is a film that I believe is must-see cinema. But I will say that I understand if some viewers that don't like films that are hard to watch, I understand if you don't want to watch this, but I do nonetheless still think that everyone should watch this film at least once because it is a 5 out of 5 in my book. It is a film that is hard-hitting and it's very well acted. It's got a great score by John Powell and just a very powerful film as a whole. So highly recommend United 93, and yeah, it's my number 1. But yeah, guys, that's my top 10 films that have always been perfect, part 3. Let me know the top 10 films that have always been perfect in your eyes in the comment section down below. And guys, as always, I really do appreciate you guys for watching. And as always, also don't forget the subscription, notification bell, follow me on Letterboxd, and I will catch you guys later.